Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Prosperous Nonprofit. I'm excited to be here with Morgan Gross, the CEO and founder of Fundraising Beyond Borders. Morgan, welcome.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Yes. So tell us where are we talking to you from today? Let's set the stage.
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually located right now in Zambia, Africa, originally from Dallas, but back here in Zambia.
Amazing. So we have about just a 6 hour time difference, which isn't too bad. So it's my early afternoon, it's your early evening. But tell us
Yes.
a little bit about the journey, like what, sort of how you got started in your career, what the path has looked like and what you're doing now.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's so fun being here. And my background and my experience, it's fun where life has taken me and never expected to kind of go on this journey. But I'll kind of start at the beginning of my initial career. So my background is actually in education and my master's is in curriculum development. So since I was in second grade, I literally said I wanted to be a second grade teacher, and I did just that. So education has been a huge passion of mine. But when I was a senior in college, a couple of my friends and I co-founded a nonprofit. So that nonprofit was centered around mental health awareness and suicide prevention. And so that was my first time dipping my toes in the development sector, and then also kind of naturally fell into the fundraising world. And, kind of looking back, and you often hear this with other fundraisers, looking back, that's when I started to notice I have kind of always been a natural fundraiser. So, starting at a young age, doing the lemonade stands, and then in high school, gathering family and friends to do peer-to-peer fundraisers for other organizations I was involved in. And so I really enjoyed the development sector. But then on the side, I had this also huge passion for travel. So while I was in high school and college, I had traveled really all across the world, hadn't made it to Africa yet, and I had always just been somewhat drawn to Africa. Couldn't tell you exactly why or where that came from, but had just kind of this pull towards Africa. And I was teaching second grade, absolutely loved it. But I knew at the age of still 23, I still had this huge world in front of me. And I wanted to figure out, did I want to use education within the classroom environment, within that setting, or did I want to also figure something else out where I could still combine education, still combine my newfound passion for fundraising, the development sector, as well as travel. So I ended up in 2016 taking a internship and moved out to Zambia, Africa, working for a nonprofit, and absolutely fell in love. Not only fell in love with the continent, the work I was doing, also then met my now husband. And 7 years later, I am still here within the African continent.
That's amazing. I think about I would have loved to live abroad, and I feel like that's like a different path that another life I would have taken. So that's incredible. So what are you doing now? So you live in Zambia. You've had this nonprofit experience, you've had this education experience. What do you do now in your business?
Yes, absolutely. So, when I signed up for that 6 month internship, I loved the nonprofit I was working for at the time and ended up going full time with them, but moved to their head office. So, this specific nonprofit was spread across East and Southern Africa. And so, when they asked me to stay full time with them, I moved down to Cape Town, South Africa. So, I was down in Cape Town for about 2.5 years. But during that time, I was able to travel all across East and Southern Africa and working for their different locations and fundraising for their different locations. And what was really unique about this organization and this nonprofit, it had a sister company that was a for-profit volunteer company. So a majority of their donors were actually volunteers, and a majority of their volunteers were donors, but vice versa as well. And so I was able to travel and meet new people from literally all across the world. So volunteers were coming from everywhere, as well as immersing myself in multiple different cultures across East and Southern Africa. Absolutely loved it. And during my time with this nonprofit, I was really trying to focus on the power of storytelling. So many nonprofits, or the specific international nonprofit, having such a international donor database. We were really trying to figure out how are we going to communicate to international donors, and to, if we're going to spread our donor database and acquire new donors, how are we going to speak to them, because so many of them haven't fully understand or experienced or been in the same shoes as these beneficiaries. And so I launched multiple marketing campaigns, fundraising campaigns for this nonprofit, and ended up winning several international awards for those marketing campaigns. And after that, nonprofits, international nonprofits within Africa, and then both within the US and UK, kind of started reaching out to me, just trying to figure out, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing over there? Why, how are you speaking to this global audience? And so that's kind of when it clicked. And I ended up going independent in 2020 and starting my own company supporting now international nonprofits so they can fundraise with confidence.
That's amazing. As you and I have talked about, I have lots of experience working with organizations who are also, have a 501c3. They're a nonprofit in the US, and then they have operations, primarily, like all of their operations are in different countries. And so super familiar with this
Yeah.
setup. And I definitely feel like this is a challenge that I have seen. Is like, we have this huge base of donors in the US, but we have not really tapped the market anywhere else. And so how do you do that? Like, what does it look like to sort of embark on this international fundraising campaign and source international funding beyond just, beyond just the country where where either your HQ is or where your operations are?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been what's so unique and about my journey over these last 7 years, is trying to figure out these different strategies. And it's such a unique opportunity when you have an international nonprofit. So majority of my clients, like you're talking about, Stephanie, they might be working in Africa, but they also have a hub in the UK and or the US. I've also worked with a couple in Australia too. And so we're trying to speak to a global audience, but then also trying to attain international donors too. And so there's been a couple different strategies that I love to work with on nonprofits, to how to attain this international donor database. And the first one is the power of peer-to-peer fundraising. So when I initially went with my new business and launched my new business in 2020, that was a big focus of mine, was peer-to-peer, because the power of peer-to-peer is incredible. So if you have just a couple of international donors, say in the UK, and somebody who's passionate about what you're doing abroad, gathering their network, gathering their family and friends, and to attain and acquire new donors that way. But then also I've really learned too the power of being digital. We are all digital these days. So it's making sure that, okay, not only are you providing different opportunities for to acquire new donors, and that can be through your website, that can be through social media, but making sure those platforms and whatever you're using are optimized for international donors. So making sure you have incredible tech. There's awesome tech out there these days that allow different payment options. So that's via credit card, PayPal, Google Pay, Apple Pay, bank transfer, crypto, whatever that might be. So making sure that your digital presence is optimized for that international audience.
Yeah, that is huge. And now that as you were talking about peer-to-peer fundraising in different countries, I do think of a couple of nonprofits that I worked with that are a really good example of that. It's like, you just need a couple people in a different area to really get excited and get on board with your mission, with their cause, and they're going to bring their friends together. And then it's like this sort of spreading effect. And then you've got this now solid donor base that you can at work, I imagine, most start with smaller gifts, but you can sort of then work that into larger gifts, different relationships, corporate relationships, foundation relationships, once you kind of start on like smaller sort of peer to peer. Have you seen that expansion in that way? Like, I would imagine that that's how it would work, but have you seen expansion in that way where it's like, yeah, we start by, getting all of our friends to donate $50 or $100. And now, somebody has a connection at this place, and now here's a $50,000 grant.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And I have seen that happen, and that's why I'm a huge fan of peer-to-peer. And so what the most crucial steps are, post peer-to-peer campaigns, is having a CRM or a donor database that can help you recognize and realize where your donors are coming from, and then the power of segmentation and getting to know your donors, right? So you're exactly right. So a $50 gift, you never know, can turn into a $10,000 gift, or that person might know somebody on a certain foundation that they can introduce you to for the next grant. So you never know where that's going to lead you to. But that is where you see the success, is the follow-up. It's the post peer-to-peer campaign and getting to know those donors, communicating to them. And that's why I'm a huge fan of segmentation and having a powerful CRM and email marketing tool. And it doesn't have to be anything robust. I work with a lot of small nonprofits, so it doesn't have to be an overwhelming tech stack, but it's just getting to know those donors, those new acquired donors, one-on-one. And that's how a nonprofit starts, right? Any nonprofit starts small. So if you're looking to grow internationally, start small and go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a good tip. And I like the point about, not needing anything overly fancy or complex when you're just getting started. I was talking to somebody a few months ago in a workshop, and she was like, "Oh, I have maybe like 500 or 1,000 people on our email list, but we just have everything in Excel right now. When do I need a CRM?" And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure you need one like yesterday." Like, I'm pretty sure, because there is
Yes.
so
Yeah.
much that like that software can do that an Excel spreadsheet can't do. And so tell me like a little bit more about that. I spend my everyday in accounting software, not CRMs, but I have used a handful. And so if your organization is like, well, we have everything in Excel and honestly, like it's fine, like whatever. What sort of paint the picture of like what can we do if we invested even a small amount into a basic CRM?
Yes, absolutely. It's one of my favorite times to work with nonprofits and clients, when it's that transition, because their minds are about to be blown what a donor management system can actually do for their nonprofit. And like I'm saying, like the power of segmentation and communication and all that good stuff. And I apologize if you can hear, as I live in the middle of the bush in Africa, I have lots of guinea fowl running around my yard right now. So they're quacking away. But so yeah, the power of a CRM or donor management tool can just really take your nonprofit to the next level. What I would do is firstly take time. So take time to explore the different options out there. And there's some really great ones. And that's one of the services I do provide, is helping nonprofits onboard new tech, which is including like different CRMs and online donation tools. And Stephanie, as we were talking about with online donation tools, I think it's so important to making sure that there's a variety of different payment options for donors, especially if you're going to have that international donor database. And so there's a lot of different tools that can work together, where it's not overwhelming. So it's just taking time to kind of look around, seeing what great tools there are, and what are the important things for your nonprofit's goals as well. So are you looking to segment? Are you looking to maybe communicate within that donor management tool? Are you looking to do video? There's some really great tools out there where it integrates video and talking to your donors via video. Do you have a lot of grants? a majority of your grant funding. So maybe you need a certain CRM for that. As well, Stephanie, as I know it's important for you, is does it sync and integrate with your finance tool too? Because that can really help as well.
That's fantastic. And I think that, the work that you do there is a service that's so needed because I'm not really a tech person. And I know a lot of people are not tech people. And so the thought of having to implement a brand new software like by yourself is terrifying. And like, I just wouldn't do it. Like, I don't want to do that. That sounds scary and hard. And so the fact that you're able to come in and you understand how all of the pieces are supposed to work together, I think that is like hugely, hugely valuable to organizations. Shifting gears just a little bit, we talked about, using the CRM for communication, really being able to communicate with this sort of international donor base. And you talked about being really passionate about storytelling. How
Mm.
is storytelling different to different audiences? Like, are you telling a different story? Is there a different message? Is there a different, like, punchline, for lack of a better word, as you're telling the story of your organization across different geographic audiences?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned with that original nonprofit, was because I was working with donors who were in the US, the UK, all around Europe, Australia. So literally such a global audience. I was researching the heck out of, okay, what type of experiences do these potential donors like to invest in? And so, for example, in the UK, especially at the time, those donors absolutely loved getting involved in like races. So like peer-to-peer races or marathons or like actual physical activities. That's what they liked to donate, how they like to donate. Whereas the US audience was definitely getting more into the digital age. And so we were trying to make sure that there was multiple ways for these Americans to donate via Facebook, via Instagram, whatever it was at the time. And so, yes, I did. You have to do a ton of research on that and figuring out who your donors are, who your ideal donor is. But in regards to storytelling, that is so crucial. And like I was mentioning, if you are a international nonprofit and a majority of your donors are abroad, and a majority of your donors haven't been through what your beneficiaries go through every day, or don't physically or have mentally gone through those challenges that your beneficiaries have gone through or go through every day, it's hard for them to understand. It's hard for them to actually know why is the need actually important. And so when I was with that previous nonprofit, we launched a gender equality campaign. And what we did was we made sure we did an imagine if. So imagine if, and that campaign was basically imagine if you were in their shoes. And we broke it down and we made sure that those potential supporters fully could kind of picture themselves in that situation. And so I think that's really important to whatever message you're trying to get across, is making sure that you're doing it. And I think it's really important to make sure that you're doing it ethically as well. And but you're really trying to paint a clear picture for those potential supporters.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point and a really important lesson, regardless of where your organization works or how it's structured. Like, the lesson that we may need a different message for different people on our list at different
Yes.
times. And so that goes back to the importance of having a CRM where you're able to like tag people and segment people. So you could share one story with this group of donors that you know is really passionate about this particular area of your work, and then a different message for those that are
Right.
passionate about something else or whatever. So I think that's hugely important regardless of geography, but especially for, an organization that is so global like you're talking about. And I like that you mentioned mentions the piece about sort of ethical storytelling, because obviously we don't want to sort of create this entertainment spectacle out of, other people's poverty, basically. And so I think that piece
Yeah.
is super important. And I don't know, I'm not a fundraiser, but it definitely feels like towing a fine line where it's like we want to tell these people's story, but we also don't want to make it like entertainment for the sake of the donors. So I would imagine that's kind of tricky, but how do you sort of recommend organizations navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a huge fine line. A lot of the nonprofit clients that I work with, the words are coming straight from the beneficiaries. So it is not the nonprofit making up words from and portraying what they think the nonprofit is. And I think what's also very important is, I mean, this can't be the case for all nonprofits, but having nonprofits having a really great base of their local leaders and being part of that storytelling process. So if you're, based in Africa, based here in Zambia, making sure that your supporters and your leaders and your beneficiaries have a say in what is being put out there. So it's coming from first person. It is coming from a group of leaders as well, and being approved by where it's coming from.
I love those tips. I think that's really practical advice. And I mean, it could really be applied again, regardless of your organization structure, if you're working in different countries or not. But taking that into consideration to making sure that we are being respectful and ethical with our storytelling, and that it's a collaborative process, not us sort of coming in, making up our own stories and, trying to save the day. So I appreciate that insight a lot. What's your sort of perspective on the future? This is a very broad question. What's your perspective on the future of the nonprofit sector? Like as a consultant, you obviously have a broad view of the sector. What trends are you seeing? What new needs or demands are there? What is looking different as we're, kind of going into the next year? What is looking different to you?
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest shifts that I've seen is not only, online engagement and how donors are giving online, but post donation is the donor engagement. So it's not necessarily, a lot of I would say last 10 years was a lot of like, okay, what is the donor communication? But now it's like, how are we actually engaging our donors? It's not just communication, but I like to really hone in on the fact of it's, yes, communication, but it's also education. So how are we educating our donors? And also how are they, how are we making a community and providing a community for our donors to get engaged? So providing unique and creative opportunities for our donors as well. And also not just having it where, if a donor comes in, gives a $5 gift, we send it a simple thank you, and we're treating, our major donors extremely special. But it's like, how are we creating an engagement plan that where every single donor comes through our door, feels loved, feels encouraged, feels like they're a part of our community, they're providing impact. So it's providing unique engagement opportunities for your donors.
I love that. And I think, there are so many ways in our everyday lives that there are these sort of digital communities that it's almost like if the nonprofit
Yes.
sector were to not sort of keep up with that, we would be falling behind. Like I'm just thinking about, in terms of like there's like ways to be part of a digital community for your neighborhood, like actually where you live, for your town, for your children's school, for this special interest group, for your book club, whatever. Like there are all these digital communities that we're all probably part of, at least a dozen of them. And so I think that's really interesting to create a sort of engagement space for donors beyond just like sending them an email every single week asking for money. Are there any like interesting or creative ways that you've seen, like a couple examples of organizations who are doing this really well? Like what are they doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way I like to start is just a welcome series, especially with new donors. So Clowns Without Borders does an amazing job of sending an immediate thank you note with a video that has a it's a thank you video welcoming the donor into their community, but showing them what it feels like, what it sounds like, what it smells like, just providing all those senses of what it's like to join their community and who they're impacting and where their donation is actually going. So I love first steps, just like a welcome series. It can be very simple. But then some unique ways are hosting digital panels. So bringing in experts in the field. So if your nonprofit is around education, bringing in a couple guest experts to talk about specific topics that are relevant to that field, and inviting your donors just to come and learn about, where their donation is actually making an impact. That just provides, an educational opportunity. Another really fun touch point that I like is having coffee table books. So I'm one of those big components of I'm not a huge gift person, so like there's no need to send the pens or the those little gadgety things, plastic things that are gonna end up in the landfill. But I am a huge component of, okay, what is going to be impactful and also start a conversation. So I've seen some really cool coffee table books, something short and sweet, but it showcases stories, it showcases stats of what your nonprofit is doing, and sending it to your donors, having them display it, and it's a conversation starter for the future. So when they're having their family and friends over and it's laying on their coffee table, it's a great conversation starter, and they're proud of it, right? They're proud of the work where their donation is going. I know that's not a digital one, but that being said, I still really encourage international nonprofits to still gather physical addresses, because of that is, if you have donors or volunteers in that country willing to ship for you, that's still a wonderful option to have your snail mail go out.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. I love these ideas. The first one, where you talking about digital panels, I mean, that's essentially like content marketing. And I feel like that's what we are told all the time as entrepreneurs and business owners, like, content marketing, content marketing, content marketing. You need to be out there, putting out valuable content to your potential clients or customers. And this is
Yep.
not something that I see happening all the time in the nonprofit sector. It's like there's a lot of focus on storytelling, which is great, but not this sort
Yes.
of like up leveling your education by like, come sit, come listen to this digital panel or to this workshop or whatever about this particular, our area of expertise. Like, that's brilliant. And I feel like I don't see that very often in the nonprofit sector, but we hear it all the time as entrepreneurs. So good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's just that, and that's the key piece that we often forget about of engagement. How are we going to educate our donors? Um, they're obviously interested in that topic or share the same values in that specific topic that your nonprofit um, is all about, your mission is all about. So why not continue the education? And so not only you guys, the nonprofit, can learn, but then also the donor themselves.
Yeah, I love that so much. And coffee table books, It's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that before, but I did receive a coffee table book from one of our clients. We went to visit their facility, and they were like, "Here's this beautiful coffee table book showcasing the work for organization of the last 30 years." And I was like, "Wow, this is so cool!" Like flipping through these beautiful photos and these amazing stories. And with like online printing options nowadays, like that's really not that expensive to put together something like pretty nice. So I love that idea so much. And there's so many more ways, but I love these two to begin with. Super, super creative. Awesome. Well, I have just, I think, a few more questions for you. The one question that I ask of everyone that comes on the show is, what does a prosperous nonprofit look like to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like when you hear the word prosperous, you think money or having financial success. And I definitely feel like that's a huge goal of mine for my clients. We obviously, the more money equals the greater impact. And so that's, what I'm here to set for is strategy and hopefully, deliver results to improve their overall fundraising levels. But bigger picture, when I think about prosperous, it means really like achieving a sense of wholeness. And I want my clients to really succeed with their donors, but also find confidence. I think that's at the end of the day what it comes down to as well, is prosperous can mean confidence. And that can look at it in a variety of different ways. But to feel as a fundraiser and to feel as a nonprofit leader empowered, as well, and to gain community and feel like their work is a whole part of them, I think is can really correlate with that word prosperous.
I love that. That's so good. And it's so interesting because I've asked this of like probably, I don't know, 30 or 30 people plus now at this point, and everybody has a totally different answer. And most of them are not necessarily about money, not directly about money. So I think that is a beautiful answer. Well, Morgan, I would love to send our listeners in your direction. Where can we go to find out more about you? Is there anything that you want to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on www.fundraisingbeyondborders.com. All my social media is at Fundraising Beyond Borders. I'm definitely the most active on Instagram and love engaging with you all on Instagram. So definitely reach out to me via DM. And also, I have a lot of great resources on my website. So under my tab resources, there's some really good free downloadable content that can really hopefully get you started on setting the foundations for your international nonprofit. So one of my favorites is the individual giving fundraising assessment. So that is going to look at the health of your overall individual fundraising program and give you some actionable next steps of how you can improve there. So feel free to always reach out. I love just introducing and talking to especially international nonprofits and nonprofit leaders and fundraisers. You guys, everyone is just incredible in this sector. So it's always fun just to say hello.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Definitely everyone should certainly go check out that individual giving fundraising assessment. It's always so helpful to have tools like this that are built by experts that you're like, okay, this is actually super useful and can help me take the next steps in the direction I want to go. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you for just sharing your expertise. I think what you do is so unique, and this is how we initially connected. We were on that call for the Raise More Together Summit, and when you said you work with international organizations, my ears perked up because that's my sort of passion, and working with international development organizations as well. And so glad to be connected, and I know lots of people will find this very, very helpful. So thank you so much, Morgan, for being here.
Thank you, Stephanie. It was great.